Hi there, it's Carl Irwin, the Common Magician. I've got something interesting to share with you. We're going to talk today about types of controls, open controls versus sleights. Why one approach works in one place but not in another, or vice versa. How you can change the situation to make maybe a particular approach to work. Why I prefer one way over another, all those kinds of things. But I've got here a deck of cards, and what I want to do is I just want you to you can take any card you're thinking of. I just give you the deck, take out any card you're thinking of, and I'm randomly picking one. Let's say it's this one right here, and we put that back into the deck, right? You can see that it's going in. You can show this to other people just to make sure that everybody sees it and has a good view of it. You put that back in. In fact, I don't even want to touch the deck. I want you to do this. Go ahead. Could you shuffle the deck? And they could take the cards and shuffle the deck all that they want. And truly, in this presentation, I wouldn't know what the card is. It wouldn't matter if I did, but I don't. And cards get mixed up completely. And this is our situation. And what we're going to do is very, very simple. They mix the cards. Cards are sitting out here. What we want to do is kind of narrow this down. There's a lot of different choices here. If I just move my hand, say stop whenever you want to. Let's say they say stop right here. Okay, fine. We'll take away those cards. And I would say go ahead and mix these up even more, and they could mix them however they want to. We'll spread those out again. Same thing again. If I move my hand, say stop, right here, and we'll take away these cards. And same kind of thing again. You can mix them up. And I spread these out, and same thing. In fact, I'm just gonna go from here. I might be out someone over there. I'll say stop. They say stop right here, and I say this one. This is the one. And they take that one, and if you take a look at the card, lo and behold, it is the card that they were thinking of. So this is all open. It's all open, and there's an approach here that facilitates this being open that we'll talk about in a minute. But there are no sleights going on in there. I suppose there's one kind of preparatory move that is not specifically a sleight, but it is covert. But otherwise, everything that's being done is just done there, right out in the open. And I think that would classify as open controls. Now, what makes an open control different from a sleight? I think one thing that makes it different is that if you had and we'll talk about that in a moment here. If you watch this channel, you already know what that was about. But if you take some cards, and say in card magic, because typically when we're talking about sleights, we're talking about cards of coins. You do this. You spread, and you demonstrate that a card in the center, maybe it's a card from the center, it's a card returned to the center. Queen of Hearts, we have it right here. And you turn it over, and then if you close up the spread on that card, now you're stuck in a situation. You have focus on the card. The identity is known, the location is known, the situation is known. In fact, it's been made fully apparent, right? I took the time to actually show what has happened with that card. So now I'm stuck in a situation where I have to do something about it. And either the thing that I do about it when eyes are burning the deck and awareness is on identity and location, either I get away with it or I don't. Right? And I don't know if I got away with it with you or not. Probably not, because you're here. But, here it is on the top. It's been controlled. So I had to shift it in some way, and I'm stuck having to find an opportunity, a motivation, a distraction of some kind, misdirect, right, in order to accomplish a sleight. I have to build in an opportunity in order to take care of that, because I have made everything about the presentation about myself being painted into a corner. Open controls don't resolve that. I mean, there are open controls that resolve that. Like, for example, here is a very standard open control. Let's say I've got this Queen of Hearts, and I'm going to cut it into the deck. And we'll give it a couple of cuts to lose it inside of the deck. Ultimate cringe for me, right, is whenever a magician says, let's lose your card into the deck and we'll give it a couple of cuts. I hate that. I hate that because what this is an open control, but it doesn't work. It doesn't really work. It works, it operates, obviously it's on top, it's a double undercut, and it works not on the premise that the control is unseen. It works on the premise that the control is confusing, right? When I say, let's put this on the table. When I say to a spectator, here's your card, and we'll lose it into the deck, the only thing I'm accomplishing right now is I am confusing you. That's all I'm doing, right? I'm just causing confusion. And with a cut, and there it is, and obviously it's still on the top. The spectator can look at that and say, they lost it in the deck. They don't know where it is. But there's no reason why they would assume that I don't know where it is. I'm the one doing the shuffling. In order for me to really prove that it is lost, I would give them the cards and have them shuffle to prove that I don't know where it is. When I'm doing this on the table, what I'm doing is actually a gambling demonstration. I'm doing a card control demonstration. Now, that is a form of magic in and of itself. It's not really magic, and a lot of people that do that don't like to call it magic because it's not magical per se. What it is it's a skill demonstration. It's a demo of what I can do with a vocabulary pertaining to cards. Typically, that vocabulary coming from gambling or card cheating. So those kinds of controls, don't fool yourself. Those kinds of controls are not really sleights. They are controls, and they do work, but only in a sense that I don't think is really satisfactory. They only work in the sense that they are confusing. And I'll be honest with you, if I'm on the street and I come up to a guy who's doing a 3-shell game on the street, and he wants me to put money down on it, I'm walking away. It's a 3-shell game, and, it's just about being confusing. When you do this kind of control, you're creating that exact same environment. And subconsciously, even if the spectator were to engage in the idea that they believe that you don't know where it's at, they should be skeptical. Because it's just a shell game, and they kind of know it, right? So anyway, those are open controls that kind of fall in between, but they don't really operate on any kind of real covert move. A sleight is designed to accomplish something that looks invisible, as if nothing has happened. I could accomplish the exact same idea, right? If I show a card in the center, two of hearts, right? And I close it right back up into the center, right? I can accomplish a control very similarly that is covert. It is essentially in the open, but it does not look like anything has happened, right? In fact, something has happened. I culled it to the bottom. There are some sleights that can work that way, that are extremely burnable, can be done in the open, and can accomplish what they intend to do with all eyes on the deck. Now, it's not completely foolproof because, there is some spatial reasoning there that if there's something existing at this point, that there's a bunch of real estate over here and on the other side where it could be, right? So when I close it into the spread and I close, oops, I dropped it because I'm looking at the camera. This actually gets back to the point I made on the practicing video about it. You can kind of see it in play here. As I'm looking at the camera, looking for where I'm at, this is kind of like practicing in a mirror. When you're practicing in a mirror and you're looking at what you're doing, you're taking your attention away from where you may need it. You may need to be looking at what you're doing in some fashion or have some kind of peripheral vision on it. And if you're dividing your attention between the mirror and what you're doing, it's very easy to fool yourself in the mirror and accept that you have learned the sleight properly, when in fact it still has some problems. So video recording is always better. But anyway, show this again. Whenever something like this is done, there is some potential for reasoning where you can see this space there. It could be worked out that something has happened. Now, the key to this is that if you put enough distance in time between that moment and the time when you do something with the card or you reveal it in some way, or if you're merely controlling it to another end. For example, I could control it, again, it's on the bottom, but I could control this to the bottom, right, in this way, same thing, get it down to the bottom, and then do something else entirely with it, right? I could cop it out and take it out of the deck or whatever without flashing, which I did right there. But you know, if you're using the sleight in that way, it really isn't, it doesn't matter. But if you were going to demonstrate that it went to the top, like on my ambitious card routine where I use a call, or on the bottom, it's good if you put some time between the moment of closing the spread so that it's more forgettable, okay? But there are these kinds of sleights which are burnable, and I think those are good almost any time. There's not very many that are like that. There are discrepant moves which are not confusing, but are done in the open. And this gets more into what I refer to as open controls, right? One being the prophecy move, Bill Simon prophecy move, which is just a very well-known one, where you have a card that's placed into the deck, and as you go to close it up, you say, let's see the face here and show it. And what I've done is I've actually transposed the two halves when I did that. And obviously it doesn't really control this card, but as a key, it does put it up against the bottom card of the deck and the top card of the deck that previously was not from the center. And that's a very useful thing. I'm shifting the deck when I do something like that. Maybe your deck shift revolves around shifting a packet somewhere. I can't even think of a context in which this would go. But you could have a card there and do the prophecy move and accomplish essentially a shift, displacing the one card that was in the middle. If it's like a joker that's been added, then it wouldn't matter. It's actually a shift, right? So that would be an open move that does not serve to confuse, because what's going on here doesn't look confusing. This actually looks very apparent, but it isn't. It's not apparent that the two halves have switched. So there's things like that. There's other discrepant moves which substitute the top for the bottom. I've talked about I'm a forever champion again of the crisscross force. I also like the Lynn Searles force, which goes like this. I'm going to force the ace of clubs, and I say, just say stop as I drop the cards. I say stop. I say I'll flip it right here. We can see that right here at the break where you picked, this isn't really confusing. I mean, it could be kind of confusing, but it should be apparent that I flipped one side of the deck to denote where the break was at. But what I actually did is I forced in the top card of the top pack. So I kind of draw the line at about something like that. That kind of comes close to confusing, but I think that's a pretty good force. I think that you get into confusing a little bit more when you get into the kind of the fully fleshed out version of that, which is the cut deeper force. And there are some good uses for it. I've talked about 51 Faces North, I think, is a very good use for this force from a common magician perspective. But the cut deeper force does the same thing. You have the 6 of diamonds on the top. You cut off a small packet, and then you say, someone else, could you cut a larger packet? And you can do this a couple times, no more than maybe 2. Certainly not an odd number, otherwise it puts the card in the wrong place. But now you can say, look, you each have cut into this, and you've indicated a spot here where the first face down card is at, where you cut to, and that is the 6 of diamonds. So as a revelation, it can work, but usually that's used for a randomized force. Now, the problem with that is that it's unnecessary, right? The procedure of doing that and doing another cut, 2 cuts and turning over, it just seems like too much process for what you're attempting to do, when really all you needed to do was, say, pick a card, right? So, and I think the Lynn Searles force does that a little bit better, 7 of diamonds. When you say stop, and then you flip and say right here where you stopped at, we have, this is your card, the 7 of diamonds. I think that's a little bit more direct in accomplishing the same kind of idea. But anyway, those are open controls. Now, there's another type of open control. And the one thing I have to point out about this is that these open controls that are kind of in the middle, you can do them out of a situation where you've painted yourself into a corner for a lot of them. However, it does add another piece of process when you have demonstrated that you are locked in to a position, and then you do something else on top of it. And I think that makes it a little weaker, right? Open controls that are truly open, where, if I need to get in my routine 3 cards from the bottom to the top, and I literally just take 3 cards from the bottom and I place them on top, that is what I call an open control, right? Or in the example there, I'm removing cards, and I literally am just removing cards. The controls are all open, but the controls are actually more mental, more psychological than they are physical. I can do the physical things without any cover at all, but the fact that I'm doing them in the first place are based on what appears to be free choices, and that allows it to be open, right? So there's those. But open controls are things that are really truly open, completely out in the open. Now, let's say I needed to get 3 cards from the bottom to the top, and it was important for the routine, but I didn't want it to look like I just took 3 and put them on the top. How would I accomplish that? How would I shift it in that way? Well, there's a few options. If I am playing at a style that is very sloppy, I can just pick up, whatever I didn't, whatever I needed to move, everything but that, and then pick them up and throw them on top. I could just do it in the open like that. That is very open. Another way, though, is to have a premise, a pretext by which I move the cards. It could be something like this. You've seen me talk about this before, where I say, let's say I need to get 3 from the bottom to the top. I say you can see that your card, or the card we're looking for, it's not on the top. And you can see it's certainly not on the bottom, right? It's none of these here. And then whenever I replace them, I just put them back on, right? The other way to do that is to say, you can see, all the cards are mixed up. Things like that. These are open controls, but I have a reason for showing something, or for separating or spreading. Without the reason, another thing I could do, without being sloppy and dropping cards and putting them back, and without having a pretext for taking cards off, another thing, let's say I need to get 3 from the top to the bottom, is I can just be very handsy with my communication. Do you know some people that talk with their hands, right? Pretty much everybody talks with their hands at some time, but some people really talk with their hands. When you have a deck of cards in your hands, you can talk with your hands with the cards in hands, right? And if I have a spread, and, I don't even have to say anything in particular about this, if I'm just talking with my hands, I can just move cards. That's another possibility too, is just in your presentation style, you have opportunity where you move things. But again, this only works when there is not a situation where you have been painted into a corner. I can't be free and just move things around when I'm saying, here's the 2 of clubs, it's going into the middle of the deck. I can't be doing things like this now, just for no reason, or excuse me. I can't be doing that because I've created a scenario that is like an escape artist act. The card is locked into the steamer trunk, and the locks are on it, right? This is when I need a sleight. is in this kind of scenario. Okay. Now, if you're not going to do magic like that, you probably never need to do any sleights at all. You can pretty much use open controls only. So let's talk about another way that open controls can be facilitated. And before I get to that, I want to show you a trick treatment. It's essentially the same trick that deals with a part of what we did there. I've got some cards here. These are special cards, and I hate packet tricks, but I actually put this together for an illustration for Vacation Bible School that I was teaching at a week ago, and I did this in a small group setting. I did it a couple times. And the nice thing about this is that I could do it for each group that came in, and they could talk about it later, and it still doesn't change the effect. It doesn't make it so that they know how it worked, okay? But I have these cards here. I've got one card. This is going to be kind of set aside. That's a bit of a prediction. I don't know if you've seen these before. Get these in the right orientation so you can see what they are. I don't know if you've ever seen these before. Right? Do you know what these are? Right? And when I was dealing with kids, they knew what they were. These are Guess Who cards. These are the cards from the game Guess Who. It's got a face on it and it's got a name. This is James. This is Brandon. This one is Katie. This one is Connor. They're all different. All of these are different. And the idea here is that I needed to do something that was using pictures. It was kind of a detective agency sort of theme for the Bible school. And we had a thing one night where they were taking, as part of a craft, they were taking mug shots, pictures, and they were putting them into their detective file, right? And that was an activity they were doing. So on the theme of pictures, I did this sort of as a lineup. You know, Guess Who is kind of a lineup where you're identifying characters. So I said, you know, these are kind of like mug shots in a lineup. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a lineup, but we're going to do it blind. And the actual story for that evening, the Bible story, had to do with a blind man. So doing this blind was a good segue into that, which is how I got there. But I take the cards and I laid them out like this, and I did the same equivocation force that I did in the opening trick. So this is just another application for it, an idea that I'm sharing with you. And I did the same thing. I just said, you know, as I move my hands, say stop. They say stop right here, and then I take away a balance of cards, pick them up again, and then I just shuffle them again. And then I did the same thing again. And I said, same thing, as I move my hand, go ahead and say stop right here. And then I have two cards. And I say, good, slide one away. And I slide one away, and then I, you know, discard the one I didn't want. And of course, this is going to be the hit. They picked Rachel, and my prediction card is a match, Rachel. And this is simple. It's not even a marked card. I just keep it always on the top. So when it came out of the stack, it was the last one, as I show. And then when I go to shuffle them, I just thumb it off first to the bottom, which means that when I place them down like this, and I make a row, a lineup, it's always going to be the last one. So I'm always removing from this side. If I want to remove from this side, and when I pick this up, I thumb it off again, and it puts it in the same orientation. If I want to remove from this side, I just put them down going the other direction, and I go to a kid over here, a spectator over here, and I say stop. In one of those presentations, I actually stopped on that card, and if they do that, you give it to them. You want to get it down to 2 or 3 where you can do an equivocate at the very end. I won't get into that. But anyway, a treatment of that equivocation force using, I have 12 and then the prediction card. And so I didn't ruin the game. I actually took some yellow card stock and then some white paper, and I made these. I just photocopied on a color printer, cut them out, or glued them to the card stock, and then cut them out, and then made this little packet trick. So just an idea. Now that is part of what we're doing. Now, all open because I'm not painted into any kind of corner. The situation is such that the cards are mixed up and they're making choices. It's those kinds of scenarios that allow you to do open magic. And I argue that being in that kind of a situation where you're hands off, you have less control, the spectators are making choices, I find that to be way more powerful magic than the kind of magic that requires sleights. This is beneficial to the common magician. Because if, and you may not agree, but it's just how I perceive it, if the kind of magic that doesn't require sleights seems more powerful, then do that. Do that kind of magic. And that's what I do. That's what I prefer. Now, getting back to this trick, one thing you can do that facilitates open moves, particularly when it comes to equivocation, and being sloppy and just picking things up and moving them where you want to, is a crimp. A crimp, I mentioned this on the practice video, is that crimping is just an superpower kind of piece of vocabulary. If you can crimp a card so that you can identify it, then you really don't have to have any control. You can hardly have any control at all. So what I do is I say, take the cards, go ahead and look through them and pull out a card that you're thinking of, any card that comes to mind. So this turns into a thought of card. They could preconceive of a card and pull one out if they wanted to, or more likely they'll look through it and they'll just pick one and they'll take it out. And I usually will tell them, go ahead and hold that to your chest so I can't see it. And then I take the cards back, and this is a pretext for getting control of that card in a minute. And then I say, go ahead and show it to someone else. And then usually what I want to do is I want them to put that in there in such a way so that I don't lose it immediately. Okay. And the way that there's several ways to do this. One is to say stop. They say stop, and I say go ahead and place it back in. Another one is to fan the cards out and say just place it back in anywhere in the middle. And when they do that, even if they push it all the way home, I will see what it is, right? I'll see that it went in there. So here's the 5 of hearts. They push it in. It probably will be a little bit out jogged. And you can hold it up. And what I want to do is I want to get a crimp on a corner that I will see when the cards are spread on the table. And that's going to be this bottom, from my perspective, the bottom left corner, because I spread left to right. So when they put the card in, I can hold it up like this from spread. And as I show it one more time and I say you can see what it is, everyone can see it, you can see where it is. When I do that, I just take the corner and with my thumb, I push it up like that. Okay. You can do the same kind of thing, spread from the bottom. If you're spreading out here, I have the same 5 and I'm showing it. I know the identity in this case and I show it. I can use my ring finger on this hand and I can push on that. It's the same corner. I push against the ring finger on my other hand and then I put in that work. So one way or the other, I can get a bend on that corner. Another way that you can do this, and I don't prefer this if I really want to make it like I don't, have control. I could take their card back. The problem with doing this is it seems like I could get a glimpse or something. But if you take their card back and you hold it from a corner, it's going to be actually this bottom, from my perspective, bottom left, this one down here. You hold it from that corner, you show it kind of perpendicular like this, and then you slide it into the deck. And as you slide it into the deck, I have this corner and I just bend it up against the top side of the deck. And I work that in. This works a lot better with paper than it does with plastic. With plastic, it's hard to kind of get a managed piece of that. With paper, it's a lot easier. Just put a bend in and it works pretty well. With plastic cards, it's a lot better, I think, to do one of these other moves where you can really kind of fold it right over, almost on top of itself, but you don't want to crease it. But I fold it and I put in really good work. I show it one more time. Then I close it up and I immediately get rid of the cards. I say, look, I don't want to have any control. You go ahead and just shuffle these up. They can shuffle them any way that they want. They can even do an in-the-hand riffle shuffle. That crimp will not come out of there. That will be in there. Once that's done, all I have to do is take the cards back, hold it in middle, and get a look. And once I see the break, if I don't see the break, I know it's on the other side. If I take it back, I don't see the corner showing up down here, I know it's up here. And then I turn it over and I can see where it is in the spread. I could cut it to a place if I want to, but in this case, I don't need to do that. I just spread it, and because I saw in the stack where it was, I know where it's going to show up, and I can see there's a shadow here, a little place where that corner bumps up against all the other flat corners. So this really can only be done with cards that are in good condition and flat. Okay, if you're using really, really warped cards, it'd be harder to make this out. Do not worry about the fact that that can be seen by you. Obviously, if I can see it, they can see it too, but they're not looking for it. They're not looking for it. It's not something that matters to them. If you're really worried about it, if your work is really deep, one thing you can do is spread, and once you've done that, you give it a little bit of a jog like this so that it's kind of staggered, and now it disappears. For them, not for you. I still know where it's at. I've got a big long string over here, so I just say, go ahead and tell me when to stop. If they stop me here before, I'm going to get rid of all the cards on this side. If they stop me after, I'll get rid of the cards on this side. If they stop close to where it's at, I might kind of wiggle my finger in on it. So maybe they stop me here, which would be this card. But I reach forward and I push out that one. So there's a little bit of management I can do if I'm in the neighborhood, and that just kind of cuts to the quick, right? But anyway, we go from here. My assumption is they're going to stop somewhere in the middle. They usually try to do that. I'm just going to get rid of these ones over here, and then I say, great, shuffle them again. And they shuffle them again. Same thing, I take it back. I can see where it's at. I do this again. And then I just follow the same thing. I might even do this. I might even say, look, I'm just going to go like this. Say stop whenever you want. What I'm going to do, because it's central, I'm going to zero in. If my fingers go all the way to the middle, I'm going to end on that card. I'm going to force it to that, right? They'll probably call before I get there, and I'll get to here, and then they say stop. I want to go for 3 cards, right? So I might just put down here on the ones outside of that. Mine's in the middle. There's a lot of different ways to call this. You can do different things. You can spread one way and then spread the other, right? That's possible. Now I can see my crimp. Now I might start working out that crimp at this point because there's only a few cards left, and I can keep track of 3 cards. So I might pick it up like this and mix them around a little bit. And I've got it on the end, and I might take it for a second and give it a bend as I put it down, and I know it's over here. It just kind of clears up the air a little bit because now we're down to a few. It's a lot easier to see. And now I do my equivocation. I say, go ahead and slide away any 2. Let's say they slide away those 2. I get rid of the one I don't want. I say, go ahead, push one back. Give me one back, and you can't see anymore. They say, push one back. They push back this one, which is my target. And I say, great. I pick that up. And then I show the revelation, the 5 of hearts. So all open, all done in the open. It's all based on questions, and it's based on my knowledge of where the card is at, provided a marking that I put onto the card in an impromptu setting. Very, very powerful magic. That's way more powerful than pick a card, find a card, right? This is think of a card, shuffle the deck, shuffle again, make all the choices, and then I come down to it. That's, an extremely powerful trick that uses 0 sleights whatsoever. The closest thing you get to a sleight is a covert crimping action, which is done completely out of view. It is a very, very simple thing to do. But anyway, open controls. So why do you need sleights? You need sleights because you've painted yourself into a corner. And highly visual magic does that. Highly visual magic requires one to paint oneself into a corner. And then have to do something extremely tricky to get out of that corner. That's what sleights generally are for. Controls. There are controls that are done in the open and operate on confusion. I find those to be fairly weak. They're not useless, but they are weak. I mean, one that I do all the time, 5 of hearts. I like the jog shuffle. I'm a real big fan of the jog shuffle. And I'll do a jog shuffle, particularly if I'm going to force a crisscross force in a revelation. I can do the jog shuffle, and because they're going to be cutting into the middle, and they're the ones that are going to be doing it, whenever they go to do that force, it takes all of the attention away from the idea that I've controlled it to the top or the bottom, because they think they're going to the middle. They're not. They're going to the top or the bottom. But that's one situation where I know that it operates on confusion, the jog shuffle, rather than shutting a door. But it really doesn't matter because I'm giving them control immediately after I do it. And the line I always say whenever I'm using it in that way is I'll say 4 of hearts, will shuffle this in. Now, listen, I don't know where it's at. But honestly, it doesn't matter if I know where it's at. It just doesn't matter because you're going to be the one to do this. Now I've just given myself an out, right? Even though I do know where it's at, I put it where I needed it. I've given myself an out because of the next phase, the next step, which gives them control. So that's a way where you can negate confusing controls, even something as confusing as a double undercut. And I think the double undercut looks way better on the table than it does in the hands. In the hands, the double undercut, I think it looks really, really strange because you're cutting in an odd way, you know. To cut is to take one part off and put it somewhere, but then to peel off, you know, and cut in 2 different ways, I think it looks odd. However, when you do this on the table, right, to do that, a triple cut, which is a double undercut, it's the same exact thing, same motion, I think that looks a lot more authentic. But again, this operates on confusion rather than on painting myself into a corner. If I really wanted to paint myself into a corner, I would do all that and then I would say, here, shuffle. And I would let them shuffle the deck. Now, one thing I could do is I could, and forgive me here because I'm kind of doing this on the fly, right? I could give them the deck and say, here, go ahead, you shuffle it. And then they shuffle it. And then I could bring the card back in. So if I cop the card out, and then I bring the card back in, then I can allow them to shuffle. But again, is it worth it? Is it worth it? I don't know. That's an awful lot of process just to get yourself into a position where you can cop. But yeah, all these sleights, double lift, shift, even the convincing control, which is based on the on the call, palming, copping, various ways to get in and out of that. All of those things are required because you are in a corner and eyes are on the deck and awareness is up. And that's why sleights have to be clean. Those are the reasons why. But if you can engineer your magic such that you're not painted into corners in that way, and you do so by relinquishing control and giving control over to the specter, which again I think makes for much stronger magic, I really do, then you just don't need sleights most of the time. You just won't. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. A couple of ideas for some tricks, a few basic applications of a couple of techniques that are open, and of course the ever trusty crimp, corner crimp. So very, very useful. Best of luck with that, and happy magicking.